May is done and I read 10 books, which sounds somewhat impressive until I tell you that it felt like one of the slowest reading months I've had this year so far. We had a channel rebrand, reading slump that almost threatened to swallow me whole, and somehow I still managed to finish 10 books. That's thanks to the power of audiobooks and a 35-minute commute. We've got surprises, disappointments, a book that made me just yell and scream at my car, one made me cry, and one officially put an author on my auto read list. So let's get into it. So this May, I read a total of 10 books, which for me is bordering on the edge of a slow reading month for the most part. I had a mix of Kindle, audiobook, some Libby. So this month, my books range from about a 3.25 all the way up to a 4.75. Fortunately, no 5-star reads for me in May. I am being a little bit, I don't want to say stingy this year with them, but I'm just trying to be mindful of what books that truly, truly either blow my mind enough to warrant 5 stars or, I don't know, just, you know when there's something that's 5 stars for you. It just kind of sings to you saying, that's me. So I haven't had that feeling in May, and I really only had, I think, one in April. So it's been a little bit slow the last couple of months on the 5-star read front. So before we get into the actual books, here's how the month shakes out. So we had no DNFs. So that's a good thing. Like, I'm always happy about that because this is my year of embracing the DNF, and I didn't have to this month. No 1 stars, no 2 stars. So right off the bat, while I was a little slumpy this month, not having any DNFs, 1-star or 2-star reads, I mean, I'll take that every day of the week. 5 books landed in the 3-star range. When I say 3-star, I mean from 3, 3.25, 3.5, 3.75. That all counts. So when I say range, I mean everything that falls in that bracket. After that, we had 5 books that fit into the 4-star range. So 4, 4.25, 4.5, 4.75. I just never achieved the 5-star. But I will say the 4.75, it came really, really close. I just couldn't quite do it, but I was really, really happy to find it. We're going to have our TBR counter down on this corner, just like we did the last couple of months, just to see how we're doing on that late spring TBR we did with the TBR cards a few weeks back. One book I finished technically just over the hump on June 1st, and so I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to leave that in June. I'm not going to count it towards May. I will say when it comes to the TBR, I might have added a book or two. So mood reader, can't help it. It just happens. It is what it is. So let's get into it, book by book. So book 1 for the month of May is going to be Bride by Ali Hazelwood. We've got a vampire bride, a were-alpha, an arranged marriage that neither of them want, but for political reasons, they both have to do. So there's tension right off the bat. And so this is a dip of the toe into the paranormal, not really romantasy. I mean, can you call it that? Maybe. It's right at the edge of that. And so I wasn't sure what to expect. I was reading this physically while I was listening to Reign of Shadows and Endings. What's funny is that I don't lean towards romantasy, we've established this, but I found myself enjoying the world building of Reign of Shadows and Endings, and I think that kind of was speaking to me as I'm reading Bride, thinking, I could use a little bit more in this, which is really bizarre because, for me, usually that's where I tune out. You're just kind of thrown into it, and you got to pick up where you're at, all the pieces really quickly to kind of go along with the story in 350 to 400 pages, basically. So I would say like the first 25%, it's setting it up. It's not really world building per se, but it was like the setup of everybody. You're meeting everybody, the vampire human element, how they coexist in this world, and understandable. Like you get that layout. But unfortunately, while that layout was happening, I just didn't care really about any of the characters. And eventually you get there, but it took a while. I did appreciate that there was like a mystery suspense subplot to it just being a romance. I do like romantic suspense. I don't know if this is really qualifying for that, but there was a subplot of kind of like a whodunit or what's going on and a mystery that needs to be solved in this world that they've built. And I've got to say, thank goodness for that subplot because I was not feeling the romance at all. But we're reading a romance book, so obviously at some point some feelings have to spark. And man, it took a while. Like I'm not even kidding. Like it it took a while, and so maybe that was part of why I didn't really care. There was a 7-year-old character, Anna, who is like the scene stealer of everything, as well as the cat. And so little things like that and the mystery of what's going on for me kind of kept the book going, kept me intrigued enough to keep going to find out what's going to happen in this romance. So for me, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not a slow burn. It's like no burn. But eventually we get there. I would say the last 25-30%, the book finally heats up, the romance kicks in, there's feelings involved. For me, I never really felt that chemistry, if I'm being honest. You could, just suspend belief a little bit and just kind of go with it and just get there, and that's fine. But was it really grabbing me? No, honestly, it really wasn't. Misery, our FMC, her snark, I'm not gonna lie, like it started to wear on me because again, you're waiting for something to develop all the way almost to the end of the book. So after a while, her snark and sarcasm got to me. And here's the thing, I'm Gen X, which means sarcasm is it's like our love language. So I can totally get down with that. But even me, like after a while, I was like, I'm like, okay, we get it. Like there's just a point where it kind of dulls the emotional growth for me, I guess. And the connection with the characters, feeling the connection with them, between them. Like, I don't know. Anyway, overall, the climax honestly did have some jaw-dropping moments. Even though I kind of had a feeling who the villain was, the moments that led to the climax and the climax itself was really enjoyable. It was well done. It's a solid read. I just kind of missed a little bit more of that banter, a little bit more feeling between the characters, things like that. Overall, fast, accessible, fun fantasy world. Not really a romance for the ages, but it was good enough that it encouraged me to want to read Mate, which is book 2 of the Bride duology. And I knew going into that, which I get to later in the month, that everybody pretty much universally feels like that's the better of the 2 books. And I was really intrigued enough to find out why. So we'll get there. But overall, I gave Bride 3.5 stars. Okay, so book 2 was Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Roehrich. Again, I'm not a romantasy girly, and I've got to say, I had a great time. Like, I can't believe that I had a great time. So I'm wondering, like, is it the writing? Is it truly that, if romantasy is not for you, or any genre, if thrillers aren't for you, if romance, if dark romance, any of those aren't for you, or you just don't think they are because of who you've read in the past? That could be a thing. And I gotta say that Melissa K. Roehrich, well written, to where somebody who's not a romantasy girly, like, I really ate this book up start to finish. It was almost 700 pages and I didn't mind, not one bit. So we follow Tessa, and she has a mysterious power that she does not yet understand. She is Fae, and she knows that these powers will unlock at some point. And then our MMC is Theon, who's this dark, brooding character, and his sidekick Luca, who have to go through this ceremony where the legacy, pick a Fae to be their power source. So this is full of layered world building that somebody who doesn't like world building did not mind at all. I actually enjoyed it. And this is slow burn. Like, it's slow burn, but there's so much other stuff going on that you don't mind at all. And then there's the side characters, especially Luca and Axel, who will absolutely wreck you as well as make you laugh out loud. Again, this was my absolute shock of the month, my favorite surprise that I've had in a while. These are chunker books, like big books, and I have no qualms about continuing on with the series. My one complaint for sure, and I talked about this last week or the week before, was that Tessa, she complains a lot, and I can understand a few chapters of her complaining, but after a while, I wanted to reach in my book. Like, this is the book I said I started yelling at, because I did do the majority of it as an audio, and there were moments I'm driving my car and she's talking and just on and on and on, complain, and I was just like, stop already, just get on board. And I was yelling at my car. Again, there was so much story and everybody else was pulling me along, and I knew she'd get there. I didn't realize how slow of a slow burn it was, but again, there's so many exciting other things happening that you don't mind. The only other complaint I have, other than Tessa's incessant complaining, to a point, I get that she has every right, almost touched into one of my least favorite tropes, which is miscommunication with Theon. But he pulled it back in, he reined it in, and so I was fully on board with Theon by the end. But again, Axel and Luca, I'm really excited to see more from them in the next few books. Again, by the end, I'm I'm fully invested. I want to know what happens next, how everything, I don't want to spoil anything, so I want to know everything that kind of the climax showed us and what's going on and what's happened. I'm really excited to see what direction that's going because it's some pretty big stuff. And so I'm really excited to see what happens next. Shockingly, I'm shocked. I gave Reign of Shadows and Endings 4.5 stars. Book 3 this month was The Right Move, which is Windy City Book 2. A few weeks back when we did our TBR, I pulled Caught Up, which is actually book 3 on my TBR cards. So I backed it up because I wanted to go chronologically. And so The Right Move, which is Indy and Ryan Shea, their book, who we did meet in Mile High. Indy is the best friend of Stevie and Ryan Shea is her twin brother. Her husband, or I think, are they married yet? Fiance? Something like that. Xander's from book 1 is a hockey star. Her twin brother, Ryan Shea, is a NBA superstar. Like mega star. So Indy's a woman who needs a place to stay. She had a big, huge breakup with her former fiance, and her best friend Stevie helps her find a roommate, which happens to be her twin brother. Ryan has this massive apartment, and they would almost never interact because Indy is also a flight attendant for the NHL hockey team, and Ryan is always away on basketball games. In addition to that, Ryan needs a fake girlfriend. People on his team don't feel like as captain he's taking things seriously enough, and for some reason he feels like if he had a significant other that they would take him more seriously. She needs a roommate and a place to stay. He needs a fake girlfriend, and so obviously we know where that's going to go, and it does not disappoint. Classic fake dating roommate setup executed beautifully. Windy City, book 2, Ryan Shea. I get it now why everybody loves this book so much. I went into this expecting to love it a little bit more than Mile High because it took me 3 tries to get into Mile High and really enjoy it. I see why people do love it so much, but I've got to say I like it basically right on par with Mile High. I like them probably pretty equally. I prefer more of an alpha, but for a cinnamon roll golden retriever type, Ryan Shea is caring, lovable, attentive, a little bit intense, and completely obsessed in the best possible way. Indy for me was adorable. You don't always like the FMC strangely when we read romances, and I thought she was adorable. Not everybody feels that way, but I thought she was really sweet, funny. She got him out of his shell. So for me, that's always fun when you can get the grumpy sunshine out of his little grumpy phase. I really enjoyed kind of their story and how they developed. It wasn't too rushed, not for me. It felt completely natural and believable. And then the final stretch and the epilogue tipped it over into 4.5 territory for me. It gave me everything I was looking for, and it kind of summed up that book as well as Mile High as far as like where we're at up to this point. It was almost like an HEA. It was just really nice. I enjoyed it. I didn't know I needed it, but I don't always need an epilogue. In this case, I enjoyed every second of it. As I've said before, the worst part about this is when I finish this book, that means I only have 3 left in this series to go, and it's like fear of finishing the series is just so good. So I gave this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this. Not quite 5 stars for me, but pretty darn close because of that epilogue. And I'm super excited to get to Caught Up and find out about Kai's story. Book 4 is going to be Face Off by Chelsea Curto. This is one of our TBR card pulls, and it was a new author that I wanted to try, and so I went with Face Off, which is the first in the DC Stars series. The first woman in the NHL navigating a league that doesn't necessarily want her, and a team captain who kind of baffles her mind and has a reputation that she just can't trust. So this ends up being enemies to lovers, hockey, romance with, to me, was the best part, was the friend group of the whole series. So all these different players and friends interacting with each other, which I have a feeling, is going to be a theme throughout the series. For me, that was my favorite part. If I'm totally honest, the chemistry between our 2 main characters wasn't really, it took a while to get there, and I don't know if it ever quite truly got there for me. I liked them both a lot. Especially by the end. So Maverick's supposed to be this like team captain, super playboy that everybody loves. And again, he's supposed to be this big big playboy, this superstar, and yet I just never really felt it. Like, he just immediately switched into like puppy dog drooling after our female main character, and I just was kind of like, I don't know if I felt like that was truly believable. Did it work? Yes, it worked. Felt like the biggest thing that would have tightened this book up a little bit was some more editing, and I believe it's self-published, so that's forgivable. Like, I get that. It's still really, really good and really, really enjoyable. Again, I really like the side characters. I just don't know that I quite felt the chemistry. There comes a point where they have banter. She's kind of pushing him away, like, stop trying to be friends with me. And then like that very night, they have a scene where she's like, you know, this is inevitable, us coming together. And I'm just like, no, like, I think I was yelling out in my car. I'm just like, no, it's not. It's not inevitable at all. Like, you guys barely have any chemistry. So that was earlier on. And so it does pick up. It does pick up by the end. I think it took me a little bit of time of the book, like the first 50%, to get there. Again, that's like such a minor note. I think like a tiny bit more editing could have really tightened it up just a bit to make it a little bit more smooth, a little bit more seamless. Was it enjoyable? Did I have a great time reading it? Absolutely. Not every book has to be perfect, and that is totally okay. I am absolutely going to be reading book 2, which is Power Play, just to find out what happens with our grumpy goalie Liam. I will definitely be going to at least book 2. I'm not sure if that'll make me continue the rest of the series, because I believe all the books are like close to, if not 500 pages, and I'm hoping that that editing that I felt was a little bit lacking in Face Off doesn't carry over. But at the same time, if I end up having fun, I probably won't care. And that's great. So for me, Face Off is going to be a 3.5. I had fun. Is it perfect? No. But is it totally enjoyable and worth the read? Yes. Okay. This is where, I don't know, is this a hot take? I don't know. Will this possibly upset some people? Yes. Possibly. Daggermouth. I wanted to get on board with this. I waited a few months because, you know, it's like been everywhere and everybody's raving about this. And so I kind of like to wait till like that all gets out of my headspace and I'm like just kind of going into a book clear, like I don't have any other opinions other than I can tell a lot of people really enjoy this book. And maybe a lot of those people tend to be more of my channels or people that I watch that tend to like romantasy, and I don't. Even though I still like their channels, I may not read what they read, but I really enjoy their commentary and things like that. And so maybe that, but I think universally, this is a pretty well-loved book. Okay, I'm not going to say I didn't like it because it definitely had a lot of things going for it that I did like. This isn't an age thing. This isn't a like, well, you're too old to be reading, you know, this genre anyway. Nope, that doesn't even qualify. One of the best things about the book was that the male main character was like 33 or something like that. And already it was like, yes, they're not kids. Like, awesome. That was great. You know, I went in with really high hopes, a high surveillance state, political dissidence. So you know it's dystopian. And then again, older main characters, which for me is like absolutely a bonus every time they're at least 30. So for sure. You have a mercenary bride, a reluctant heir, secretly in the resistance. The forced marriage premise to me felt a little weak. I think at the end of the book, I kind of buy into it a little more. I'm not going to get into the spoiling of the how and the why, the politics of it, because that is definitely tied to the story. But I will say, again, this is a lengthy book. By the time I got to the end, I was more willing to jump on board with it, but I never fully got with. It just felt a little bit contrived. And then the forced proximity, oh man, that was such an opportunity for like some real tension, slow burn, chemistry building. Not that that was the entire point of the book, but you should feel something. Honestly, Callum and Lyra, who are our secondary characters, that had more of a chemistry to it than Shadira and Grayson, for me anyway. And I think that if your secondary couple has more chemistry than the first, it's kind of a problem. Like, you know, again, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. So many people love this, and it's just something that didn't hit for me. Maybe it's a writing style and I just couldn't quite grasp on. I just didn't really feel that tension. The story was interesting. It just wasn't quite hitting in all the places it needed to for me to really, really, really enjoy this. The ending for me felt a little bit sudden, a lot info dumpy. Like, I know everybody's waiting for like the big twist twist or the big wah, ta-da, you know, like, oh, can't believe that happened, you know, like Metal Slinger. I get that. That can be fun, but for me, this didn't quite land as hard. Like, I didn't necessarily see it coming, but I also didn't really care, which I kind of felt bad about. Like, I wanted to care more. I'm not going to say what happens, but I wish I had been like, oh yes, like I can't wait to find out what happens in the next book because like, wow, what a twist, what a great ending. I just don't feel that way. So for me, it never felt like properly fleshed out, emotionally kind of empty, like a little bit cold. You know, to me, there should have been some electricity like under the surface. To me, forgive the pun, but an underdeveloped heart. So at the end of the day, I might be one of the few people on the planet who just did not really love Daggermouth. It was okay. I ended up giving it a 3.25. I felt like that was even generous. I tried to really dig deep and find the things that I did enjoy about it. I don't see myself reading book 2 unless there is, well, you know, you can't even say that because there were so many people that like raved about this one. This might just be an instance where the author and I just don't mesh, and that's okay. Again, super duper interesting premise. It just didn't hit for me. That's just kind of how it happens sometimes. Book 6 was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. A wealthy family's golden grandchildren get together every summer on a private island, and our main character, Cadence, is trying to piece together what happened on the summer that everything changed. This, I think I read because, well, A, it was one of my TBR cards. Why I put it in my TBR cards as a possible option was because, you know, I had seen it was a BookTok fave. I think it was in my BookTok books that I haven't read video a month or two back. There's an Amazon show about it, and so I kind of wanted to see what all the buzz was. I did know going in that this is a YA, so it's not really geared for me, and that became very, very evident in like the first 70% of this book. Up to like, your 20s and even like your early 30s, you can still really identify with that kind of teenage self. Like, sure, I remember 1994, you know, and what it was like during those summers, and, you know, yeah, I can vaguely kind of remember back to that, and which is why some books will translate. But I think to really appreciate and enjoy Gat and Cadence and their, you know, their little summer romances and things like that, I think, you know, people in their low 30s and under probably would really get a more full appreciation. So while I will give it a rating, I don't necessarily think you should take that rating if you fall in that younger age bracket. At the same time, if you're watching my channel because you're silver like me, or you're getting there, or things like that, and you wonder, like, are there times when some books just read too young for us? Yes, absolutely. This would be one of those instances. Was it good? Absolutely. Especially once we get past the 70% mark. Some of the adults start coming into play. In the TV show, they come into play much sooner. Not in the book. That really doesn't happen until about the 70% mark. And so for me, that's when things started really getting more intriguing and interesting. And then part 4 happens and just slams you face first into a brick wall where you're just stunned. And I gotta say, possibly I didn't see the twist coming because I was kind of tuning out by that point. Like, I'm gonna finish this book. It's good enough. It's well written enough for me to finish, but I was just so bored with the teenage stuff. And then, like I said, it started getting more interesting with the adults, and then boom, you get slammed into this brick wall and just shocked and stunned. And so I didn't see the twist coming, and I cried. I absolutely cried. I didn't sob like I did with like the Ravenhood series, but I definitely cried. You know, Gat and Cadence and the whole friend group, or cousins / and friend, you know, you'll see if you read it. Adorable, really, really sweet. The liars. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of the ending coming. Was it good? Yes. Did it suddenly make it to where I think people my age or in your 40s plus really can appreciate it for what it actually is, which is a very well written book that is YA. And so I'm sure it would be a 4 to 5 star read for people that it's meant for. But I honestly have to say, this is one of the first books I could genuinely say is not meant for my age group, and it does read too young. So again, at the end of the day, just a little too young for my stage of life, and I gave it a 3.25 stars, but probably a 4 to 5 star read if you're in the age range that it's probably meant for. Book 7 7 is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is another one of the BookTok books that I haven't read, and I did an audio listen as well, as this was on my reading vlog from a few weeks ago. A struggling writer moves into a famous author's house to finish her series and finds a disturbing manuscript that may be a confession of sorts, or kind of like a way to drop breadcrumbs to something else that's going on. We never quite know. It is definitely a very calculated story. I would say it's fast, addictive. It barely lets you catch your breath all the way to the ending. But about that ending, I would say it lands a little bit softer than I think it's meant to. I never heard anything about it when it came out. I only know through YouTube, because I don't do socials, kind of about it. And so I don't know any of the buzz. I didn't read the blurb going in. I just knew it was highly popular. So I really appreciated that it is like kind of mystery suspense, but it is super duper twisty. You never quite know what's going on, which I love that kind of trope. By the time I got to the end, I was expecting like a big moment. And I could see why some people feel that they did get that. I just kind of felt like, gosh, I keep saying this video, like I felt like I got a little info dumpy towards the end in the way it's all summed up. But it could just be, my take might be a little off on that. That's possible. But just for me, how I interpreted it was a little bit info dumpy, or kind of trying to wrap it all up in a nice, clean bow. And I don't think the story leans towards ending with a nice clean bow. I did fly through it. I completely understand why it has such a fan base and why there's an obsession with it. And knowing there's a movie coming, I will say, if I had to guess, I would bet that they're going to change the ending, in that it could go so many ways. Even in the book, as you're reading it, like there's so many ways this could go, and I could see where they take artistic license and change some things up. I really heavily think this. I have no reason to think it. Like, there's no notes out there saying, oh, they're changing everything, at least not as far as I know. I just have a feeling it's what I would do. And so they've got an all-star cast doing this movie. I have a feeling it's going to be awesome. And hot take, maybe, I think it's going to be better than the book. The characters are really quite interesting, and I think like I really trusted and liked Lowen going in. Jeremy I distrusted a little bit, was intrigued by, and Verity, and I don't know if this was by design, but I did not like her from the get-go. I really did enjoy the unreliable narrator vibe. If I had to pick my favorite tropes of all tropes, that is the one. It's my favorite because I feel like so many of us read so many books that it starts getting easier to kind of pick where things are going. And so for me, an unreliable narrator is like perfect. For a while you're reading this book, like you're not quite sure who to believe. You'll see if you read it, if you haven't read it yet, and you like something that has twists, turns, you don't know what's going on because you don't know if you can trust the people you're listening to and whose heads you're in. I will say that is the best part of this. I wished the ending for me was a little bit more grand, but it was enjoyable nonetheless. At the end of the day, I gave Verity 3.75 stars. Wasn't a perfect book, but did I really, really enjoy it? Yeah, I really did, and I'm really excited for the movie. Book 8, and my absolute shock of shocks of this month, is The Last Party by A.R. Torrey. This was my star of the month, without a doubt. Reign of Shadows and Ending was a shock, but this was absolutely the star of the month. This was also not on my TBR. This is just one of those that I accidentally clicked it on Audible, and it's super sensitive, so I hit play and just kind of went with it, and I'm so glad I did. I think in a month where, Daggermouth was so long, it got me like a little slumpy, and it was just like, God, you got to finish this book. Like, you can't quit. And so a book like The Last Party did everything I needed it to, which is kind of bounced me right back into like something that's fast paced and you can really get down with and enjoy. And this book has possibly the absolute worst mom in literary history, whose life and secrets and, manipulations all come crashing down around her in spectacular fashion. It's like watching a train wreck and a dumpster fire all at the same time. It had flawless pacing, start to finish. It was constantly moving. There's no lags in this book, and just super consistent, constant tension, just that perfect kind of thriller where it keeps you shocked from the first page all the way to the last. Like not just the big reveal at the end. It's nonstop all the way through. It is fast-paced ride. It was absolutely insane in the best possible way. Like dark, disturbing, manipulative, creepy in that moment. You know, Perla, the mom, you want to just shake her from the second you meet her all the way to the end. And at the same time, you cannot stop reading what comes out of her, what her brain is thinking, what words she says, the things she does. Like, you can't stop watching at all. I will say I did start figuring some things out a little earlier on in the book, but now in retrospect, I think that's intentional. I think you're supposed to start to kind of like peel back the layers with the character. And so that as you're moving along throughout the book, you're supposed to be unveiling all of its secrets. So I think that is intentional. So if you're reading it and you feel like, oh, I bet that's what that is, don't worry, because there's 50 million more twists coming after you start to think you're piecing things together. I promise you cannot possibly piece them all. This was my first A.R. Torrey book and absolutely will not be the last. Definitely an author that's going to go on my auto read list. I can't imagine this was an accident. This book being written so well, pieced together so well, edited so well, everything. Just so fast-paced, shocking, like just everything you want in a thriller. No questions asked. If you love dark thrillers and have not read this yet, what are you doing? You need to read this book. I gave The Last Party 4.75 stars. I'm a little bit stingy with my 5 stars, so it wasn't complete perfection, but it was pretty darn close. Book 9 was Shattered Gods, which was an arc from NetGalley and Sourcebooks, and I picked this on my TBR cards a few episodes ago and didn't realize when I did that the book wasn't even out yet. I jumped on NetGalley and got super duper lucky. Like 2 days later, got approved to read it, which again, I'm so grateful. After reading 9 books in this Dark Olympus series, you've got to know how it all ends. Am I sad that it's over? Yes, but was it a great culmination of wrapping it all up? Yeah, it really was. It was well worth the wait. It's one last hurrah to kind of see how it all plays out. The book is centered on Atalanta, Hecate, Hermes, and Circe. They all have intertwined pasts that you will know throughout the 10-book series that started with Hades and Persephone way back when with Neon Gods. The early chapters in this book kind of catch you up in a way that doesn't feel info dumpy. Like, it reminds you of everything that's been going on over the last 10 books and certainly over the last 3 or 4 when things are really starting to heat up in Olympus, and does it in a way that feels natural. Like, you're not feeling like you're being lectured to. You feel like it's developing as well as kind of setting up where this book's going to take us. It's just a natural re-entry in the world, especially if you took a break between the last book and now. And then once the plotting and the scheming all kind of kick in, I was completely hooked. I mean, I was down for the book from start to finish, but once all of that really kicks in, you feel like, we're in for a treat. There's constant action, dramatic moments. The relationship really is fleshed out well between the 3 women and the power dynamics, as well as the relationship that's built over years and years and years of the women. Atalanta, I was kind of surprised. I didn't see this coming, but she grabbed my heart the most. Her story, like, it's funny because Hermes, Hecate, she's kind of entertained us since book 1, the devious nature. And Circe gets dipped in here and there throughout the 10 books. Atalanta, I don't feel like I really had a grasp on, since the trials and all of that. And so I was kind of stunned that her story grabbed me the most of the 3. Hermes, Hecate, she delivers on every note that you've come to expect through all the books, and she does not disappoint this time either. And then we get to Circe, and she is a complete force of nature. Like, do not get in her way, ever. In addition to that, I loved seeing a few more layers to Demeter, as well as her daughters, and then Hades, and the much improved Zeus. It was a nice way to end it all. There's some intermittent chapters that you get a little bit of their narrative. And so I did really, really appreciate that. Hades and Persephone will always be my favorite in the series. So just getting a little bit of a taste of them throughout this book, even though it wasn't their story per se, I really appreciated it. If I had to have any critique, just in reviewing, you want to say, like, if I had to change anything, I guess I don't want to say that, but if I had to pick something, it's not even something that I can really say it warrants me having this opinion. I would have liked a cleaner or longer epilogue. I can see why she didn't completely. You know, having it a little bit more broad strokes and more vague leaves more room for our minds to kind of imagine. But the selfish part of me wanted to be like, what happens with Hades and Persephone? What happens with them, like all the way down the line of everybody you've met up to now. But I get why she didn't do that. First of all, it would take forever. But also, if you've been paying attention through all the books, you kind of already know that. And so that was just a little bit selfish of me. That doesn't detract from my rating of the book in any way. I'm just saying, if I had to pick anything to nitpick it, I'd be like, oh, give me a little bit more of a kind of an epilogue. Where does everybody end up? But that's just me. Completely satisfying ending to the Dark Olympus series. I'm sad to see it end, but I'm so grateful to have gotten the arc to read this. And again, it's sad to see them go, but what a great ending. What a great kind of wrap up to such a beloved and long series. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I'm super grateful to NetGalley and Sourcebooks Casablanca for sending it to me, and I highly recommend Shattered Gods. And that brings us to our last book, which is book 10, which is going to be Mate by Ali Hazelwood. We started with Ali, we're going to end with Ali. And now I get to see what everybody's talking about when they say Mate is the better of the two in the duology. Do I agree? Yeah, I do. I do. Now that I finished it, now I do. So this is our companion book to Bride, where we have Serena, who's a human were hybrid, and then we have Cohen, who is the alpha of the Northwest Pack. We met them both in Bride. I think, if I'm being honest, one of the things that factors into why everybody thinks this book is the better of the two, I think it has an unfair advantage because we meet these characters in the first book. We have the setup of how the wares and vampires and humans interact in this world she's created. So we already have the lay of the land. So when we get to Mate, we hit the ground running with just what's going on with these two characters because we know the backstory. So I think that allows my complaint in Bride being that it was kind of an underdeveloped relationship. We don't have that problem here because we've gotten all of the backstory out of the way. And so we can just focus on them as characters. Cohen takes a minute to kind of really show his alpha tendencies. He's definitely a grumpy sunshine. I mean, do you ever really get sunshine with Cohen? I don't know. But he definitely leans towards the quiet. You don't see those alpha traits until you really kind of get to know him and until Serena really gets to know him more, which is fair. Totally fair. I'm not complaining about that in any way. But if you're expecting him right out of the gate, I mean, he definitely barks a lot, like, and not like woof, but but he barks like, and he's just, you know, he's very abrasive and very alpha. You know, he's the leader of the pack and they all have to listen. The relationship between Serena and Cohen definitely heated up much faster than Misery and Low in the last book. They definitely, you definitely feel that chemistry much more in this one and much earlier on. I don't know if vampire fatigue factors in. I mean, is that ever really a thing? I don't know. But what I did love about this being heavily on the were side, but it also kind of had like an Omegaverse feel, which I love Omegaverse. So this kind of touched on romantasy, kind of touched on paranormal, kind of touched on Omegaverse. It's kind of like a mix of all of that. And I really enjoyed that aspect, especially since it had a darker element. And dark Omegaverse is my preference, or sports, which is kind of like my same preferences as romances, so go figure. Once things heat up, my favorite line of the book is Serena says in her inner dialogue that she wants to stay in his cabin forever and brick up all the entrances. Like, I was laughing out loud. It was hilarious. And by that point of the book, you're totally feeling their chemistry, so you would like totally agree. Not my favorite weird romance ever, but did I really enjoy it? Yeah, I did. Is it better than Bride for me? Yeah, I would say I enjoyed it more. Again, but I really think it had an unfair advantage of already having all the land laid out for you so that you can just jump right into their story. It was super duper enjoyable. I am going to take a bit of an Ali Hazelwood break at this point. You can only do so much. You've got the STEM books, which are fun. You had Deep End, which was fun. This is kind of paranormal romance. I need a break. She has a very distinctive writing style. You know, I just kind of need to clear my head and go with some other, you know, avenues, try some other authors, and just take a break from that. But I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. And I gave this 3.75. So just a little bit more than Bride. Not quite a 4-star for me, but 3.75, and I would recommend it as a duology. So that was May. 10 books, one reading slump I fought off with hockey romance, lots of feelings, and a 4.75 thriller that put a new author for me on my auto read list. Overall, I would say pretty successful, if a little slow. So again, we had no DNFs, no 1 stars, no 2 stars, 5 3 stars, 5 4 stars and up. No 5 stars this month, but 1 came close. Star of the month for me in May was beyond a doubt The Last Party by A.R. Torrey. Completely just blown away by the thrills and the train wreck of it all. My biggest surprise this month, without a doubt, Reign of Shadows and Endings. I don't really love romantasy as a rule, and yet I ate this book up start to finish. Loved it, and will absolutely be continuing the series. And then there's my biggest disappointment, and I'm sorry. I wanted to love Daggermouth. I really did. It just didn't happen for me. I fully appreciate that so many of you love it. That is so valid. I think it might just be maybe this author's writing style in my brain, how it kind of perceives books, just didn't mesh. Everything's there. I just didn't quite break it down in the way that it seems that most people did. So let me know what you're currently reading. Let me know what was your best book of May. What was your biggest disappointment of May? Drop me a comment. I want to know everything. And if you're new here, I'm Larissa, and this is Silver and Red, and I will see you next week.